And of course, looking at the Sassa story that has been making headlines for the most of the time, capturing our imagination. Now, the Department of Social Development and South Africa's Social Security Agency have submitted answers to the Constitutional Court on the grant payment crisis. Along with the CPS and the Post Office, the Ministry and Sassa submitted the affidavits before the 4 p.m. deadline, and the Constitutional Court had sought full details of the new social grant payment contract with Cash Paymaster Services. And here are some of the proposals put forth by the agency. Number one, Sassa will report progress on the steps they have taken or will take by the 22nd of March to ensure that grants are paid by the 31st of March this year. And Sassa must report to court on the quarterly basis, setting out how they plan to ensure the payments of social grants after the expiry of the interim contract, and that the Public Protector or Auditor General or both jointly to monitor the interim Sassa CPS contract, and that the Public Protector or the Auditor General or both may evaluate the terms of the interim contract with Cash Paymasters, and the Public Protector or the AG or both may evaluate steps taken by Sassa for any competitive bidding process aimed at appointing a new contractor. And joining us in studio is Tshepo Kgadima, political analyst. It's been a while. Welcome to you and good evening. Alison Tilly is with the Right to Know. She's a member of the National Working Committee. Good evening to you, Alison. Are we any closer in getting some form of a guarantee and I suppose a much longer way forward in dealing with the Sassa grant issue?
Well, I think we certainly are getting to the point where we're starting to see what the end game is. It seems as though the only service provider on the table at this point is CPS. We still don't have any idea, one of the key questions that we've been asking, which is how much will this cost? So that isn't answered yet. What is set out is that there will be a process, and what the Ministry and Sassa are proposing to the court that the court not try to intervene and give any strict guidelines or parameters or numbers at this point in terms of how much should be paid to CPS, but rather that they try to set out a transparent process and ask that the court be satisfied with receiving reports on that, how that process is unfolding.
In studio, Tshepo Kgadima, political analyst. So please stay on the line, Alison. Is the nexus here really, Sassa, in that government was able to pay out grants way before the agency was established, and the over-reliance on this whole triple P, the public-private partnerships, in its efficiency in dealing with this matter? Should it rather be insourced, Tshepo?
Well, I mean, the situation stands now, it appears that it is not cost efficient. And in the times we live in this country, economically, it would demand that any procurement that is done must be cost efficient. And certainly this contract, I think, has been proven many times that it is not cost efficient. But what is very puzzling and really flabbergasting is the fact that this contract that was declared invalid by the court, the Constitutional Court no less, in 2014, would have, had it not been declared invalid, would have expired on the 31st of March 2017. So steps should have ordinarily been taken anyhow to have ensured that come the 1st of April, we do not end up with the April Fool's joke, but that indeed we do have a very practicable, cost-effective solution in place, and it has not been there. One wonders as to the agency itself, Sassa, and as you correctly point out that there was payment before the agency was established of social grants. Why was it so necessary that there be an agent who acts on behalf of the agency known as Sassa? Because Sassa ordinarily, since its inception, that capacity and infrastructure should have been established for them to be able to pay the grants as they become payable without having to rely on a third party. On the other hand, the corporate entity itself, which is a listed entity, therefore, we would always quite correctly demand that good governance and ethical conduct and all of that. And I'm not alleging anything, but I'm just saying, one wonders as to why did they, when there was the tender that was attempted to be issued that has since been withdrawn, why did this entity, Cash Pay Master Services, withdraw from that bidding process? Because if indeed they do have this unique technology that they claim to have, that no other entity has, they should have had the confidence of being able to participate in the tender process, knowing that they would then, as the incumbent, continue to have a legally valid contract going forward. We should never have been in this mess. And their withdrawing from that tender process, it leaves far too many questions, but a bitter taste on the mouth of many, because now, effectively, they are holding the proverbial gun onto the head of the state, and the state has no other choice but to have to now, even it would appear, contract at a higher cost than what has been the case to date. So can we really afford it? Does the budget allow for that? So there are far too many questions. And lastly, Cindy, the issue of having the AG or the public protector, it would appear that there's an assumption that those two entities, the AG or the public protector, have got the capacity to do the monitoring. And the last time I checked, these two entities, in fact, were stretched in terms of human capital. Therefore, to give them an additional burden, as now Sassa is seeking to do, for me is also puzzling.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Avashni Naidu is Black Sash KwaZulu-Natal Regional Manager. Just as Swepo was saying, Avashni, that as much as we're focusing around the looming pressure of meeting the April the 1st deadline, we also need to scrutinize the role of CPS, and primarily when it's supposed to bolster the government agreement between the public and private sector. At this stage, it does seem to have benefited more CPS than what it has taxpayers in this country.
That's so true, and that is the reason why we've approached the Constitutional Court to hear our matter. This was our concern all along, because we felt that due to the pressure on Sassa to meet the deadline of the 1st of April, it could only be in favor of the corporate entity rather than the beneficiaries or the taxpayer. So we're hoping that the court still has the power to intervene and make some oversight and give some direction as to how this can be preempted or put a stop to in a way, so that we cannot continue with this kind of, where the inroads made in terms of our constitutional democracy are not eroded going forward.
And Alison, sorry, I hope you're still on the line. Just when it comes to the deadlines that have been set, first it was on the 15th of March that the finance minister needs to give a nod and the Constitutional Court needs to intervene, very much orchestrated from what it seems from the muscle of the private entity. In this case, over and above the fact that they didn't even participate in the process of awarding a bid. Going forward, even with the interim contract, is it adequate that the public protector, AG, and there's everybody else looking into this contract, or should it be a case where, it's only for 12 months? Others were questioning, why isn't it longer? What is the time frame you think that we should afford CPS before we opt for another service provider?
Well, I think one of the things that we don't know is how long the contract will be entered into. So I'm not aware that there is a time for that contract. What we do know is that for the public protector, the role of the public protector is to look into maladministration in government. They don't have a role in relation to the private sector. So it's not a perfect fit in terms of the public protector's mandate. And in terms of the Auditor General is an auditing agency. They come in and do audits. And audits are after the fact. They're not an agency which is involved in entering into contracts. So, these are agencies whose mandate is not to enter into cost-effective contracts in order to deliver social grants. That was the minister's job. And the minister and Sassa were supposed to do that. And I think at this point, we're trying to bring in agencies, and I would include the Constitutional Court. We're trying to bring people in to try and help fix this. But these are not agencies that should be doing this. At the end of the day, it should be the Ministry and Sassa who should have entered into this contract, and we still don't know We still don't have a signed contract. We don't know who will pay these grants, and we don't know how much it will cost us to pay them.
So sorry, Alison, just the rationale behind Sassa's heads of argument saying that the Constitutional Court shouldn't have oversight in the contract of CPS. Why would that be an argument for them to make?
Well, first and foremost, I'm just battling to see how the highest court in the land, being the Constitutional Court, will go against its own court judgment that it made in 2014. And therefore, it's very puzzling the manner in which they have phrased that argument in their heads of argument. But as I say, there are just far too many questions. What worries me and really perturbs me is the fact that to this day, we still have not heard from the state government, both particularly from Minister Batabile Dlamini and from the other ministries that are related and that have got vested interest here, as to this promissory note that they are giving. Why must we rely on it to say that come the 1st of April, come hell or high water, the grants will be paid? They have not come up with the detailed particulars as to the mechanics. How are they going to do that? And in the event that the court does not agree with the new contract that they are now proposing, and it's also interesting because up till now we don't know what the content of that new contract that they want to enter into entails. So it will be interesting to see how the court makes a finding on it. But lastly, I think what worries me even more is the fact that the agent, and in this case being Cash Pay Master Services, is a proprietor, it would seem, of database of the recipients of the grants, and that database, it belongs to the state. It puzzles me as to why did Sassa and the Ministry of Social Development, why did they not seek to have that database released to them so that they could therefore take over the function of paying the social grants come the 1st of April without having to enter into a contract that costs even more. And in fact, it can never be justifiable that the contract that today we understand it costs 16 Rand 45 cents or so per transaction can now escalate to some of the figures that we have seen, and nobody has come out and disputed those. The people with intimate knowledge who are negotiating this contract have not come out and say, no, not. But the entity itself, CPS, has said the contract will be somewhere between 20 and 25 Rand, the new transaction fee. Now, they have got already existing infrastructure, which ordinarily, come the 31st of March, would have been redundant. Why would they now want to receive a higher fee than for an infrastructure that in any case would have become redundant? There's no new investment they have to make. Therefore, they cannot justify a higher transaction fee per transaction. Yeah. So these are the things that the nation needs to know. But the mechanics are very important. They cannot keep on communicating in parables. They need to be specific.
Yeah, Vashni, I mean, from Black Sash as well, as this the arguments that you're making, I mean, Sassa and its heads of argument saying that the court essentially cannot dictate what the terms of the contract of CPS, including how much they ought to pay the private entity. Over and above that, also saying that going forward that, they have the prerogative with the doctrine of separation of power between the executive and the judiciary, that the Concord doesn't have a role to play in this. What's your view?
You know, for us, because of the fact that this is a constitutional obligation on the state to provide grants to state beneficiaries come the 1st of April going forward, we feel that at least in terms of giving some form of direction as to how this process should unfold, and also having oversight of that contract that is yet to be negotiated. You know, there's, as the former speaker said, there's so much of variation. Yes, the contract is going to be signed. Yes, by last week Friday it was supposed to be signed. Today's the 13th of March, and it's still yet to be signed or still to be negotiated, depending on what Treasury has to say. For us, it's very critical that the Constitutional Court has some kind of oversight over that. And for the fact that that contract has not been finalized yet in whatever format, whether it's a new contract or tendering in terms of the continuation of this existing contract or whatever, we feel that the Constitutional Court, by virtue of the fact that it protects the state beneficiaries, should have some oversight over that and give some direction as to what that negotiation should look like. We do understand and appreciate the separation of powers, but we are talking about over 17 million beneficiaries, and this is an emergency situation created by Sassa, not by the beneficiaries themselves.
I mean, sorry, Vashna, and Tsepo, just the role that Sassa has, are they even in a position to say to the Constitutional Court, you must butt out, we will take it forward, considering where we are in this mess?
Well, whatever contracting that Sassa does, it has to be in accordance with the PFMA, the Public Finance Management Act, and the relevant procurement provisions in PFMA. Now, I don't know if what they are asking the court to do is to effectively suspend those provisions in terms of PFMA for them to enter into this contract, and even the length of time, because to date, they have still not answered as to what prevented them from day one after the Constitutional Court made the decision in 2014 that the contract was invalid. What stopped them from taking all necessary measures to ensure that we do not end up at this point where we are on the verge of a catastrophe? What have they done? And it would appear that they are having difficulty to answer that, because to answer that means somebody has to take responsibility. But that responsibility that anyone has to take, it comes with consequences. And it would appear to me that in order to run away from consequences, they are not wanting to address these very serious issues. My own view is that unless and otherwise there is really that executive authority that comes in from the state, and the executive in this case being, the president, come the 1st of April, we're going to end up with a catastrophe on our hands, because I just cannot see any way, or else we'll end up with a catastrophe where grants are not paid, or the transaction cost of paying those grants will be so high that already there's no budgetary provisions from the budget that Minister Gordon read a month ago. There is no budgetary allocation for this increased transaction fee that they are talking about. So that's why we are worried, because no one is coming forth with cogent answers to these very difficult questions. But the government, they owe it to the South African citizens to come out and communicate in clear tones. They cannot continue in this hide-and-seek situation that we are seeing. And even before the SCOPA, we believe that Minister Gordon tomorrow will be answering to SCOPA on this very particular issue here. There needs to be more details, but that reassures that there is a clear plan. There's not hope, but there's a clear plan that come the 1st of April, payment will be done cost efficiently, not at what has been suggested.
Yeah, Alison, I mean, beyond the certain imperatives in terms of reporting back to the Constitutional Court by the 22nd of the month, and ensuring that every avenue has been explored to guarantee that the grants will be paid, it seems there's more confusion and more murkier waters than what we actually are privy to. I mean, when are we going to sort out the Sassa issue?
Well, it looks as though it may take a long time, and I would agree with the panelists. I think this has created an emergency where it does look like laws will be ignored, laws will be broken. I don't see at this point how the PFMA can be complied with, unless it is to say that this is in fact an emergency. But to say it's an emergency is really it's a fiction, because we've known this has been coming. An emergency is where something happens that you couldn't have predicted. Now we're in a situation where I think grants will be paid. I think they'll probably be paid in terms of a contract that's not a legal contract. We're going to pay on every grant, we're going to pay more than we're paying now, and we're going to pay it to a company that has really quite dubious practices in terms of, it seems, the selling of personal information from the Sassa database onto other companies. And the point about who's looking after that data, I think is a very good one. So I'm afraid the way forward is really not clear, and the role of the court and the public protector and the auditor general, I'm afraid those roles are not clear to me either at this point.
And Ivashini, just the post office, what are the alternatives? Because, we are a country that prides ourselves in being advanced technologically and being to compete against the best in the world. I don't necessarily want to mention company names, but surely it can't be just the sole reliance on CPS, let alone the fact that, it's costing so much more. Is the post office even an alternative? How feasible is that in the immediate term? All right, I think we've lost Ivashni. Just, Tsepo, maybe just to clarify on the post office being a feasible alternative at this point. Is there nothing else that can be done besides sticking to CPS?
Yes, I think the post office, and by their own account, they believe that within a 6-month period, they can be able to take over the payment. They can build the infrastructure, the capacity to be able to pay. And I see no reason why they can't do that. But the key thing that will be needed, that needs to be done, is to ensure that the database is secured of the current beneficiaries, because that is the property of the state. It can never be the property of the private entity that currently is the agent paying those grants. So if they can secure that database, and based on what the post office is saying, based on the footprint of the post office, and based on some of the technological advancements that we have, I am confident that the post office certainly can be able to, at a lower transaction fee, they can be able to carry out this the payment of these social grants, and maybe that's an option that we hope that the court will invariably support, that within a 6-month period you migrate. I cannot see any reason howsoever why Sassa or the Departments of Social Development would demand or require that they need 1 or 2 years with cash pay master services, and without a clear plan as to, well, what exactly are they going to be doing in that 1 or 2 years, which they couldn't do in the last 3 years. They have not come out as to what caused their failure for them to take necessary measures in the last 3 years, and why should we believe them now that come the next 12 months or 2 years, if this contract is a new contract effectively, because an invalid contract, they are now wanting it to be extended. Therefore, why must we believe them? They have not come forth with the necessary answers, and it is high time now that they must communicate to this nation in order to save us from further unnecessary cost and embarrassment.
Yeah, Ivashni, thanks. I believe we have you back. Just the whole question of how we ended up here, considering that there was an interim period where we could have built in the necessary infrastructure for government to take in this role, which is an essential government function and doesn't have to necessarily enrich a third party at the cost of taxpayers. Are you confident, number one, that grants will be paid out? And secondly, how soon can we turn around the situation for government to take over the payments of grants?
Well, I completely agree. This should never even have gotten to this stage. Sassa, Department of Social Development, had ample time to get their necessary infrastructure in place, the necessary capacity and resources together, so that come the 1st of April 2017, they should have been in a position to take over the grants, especially with the Constitutional Court ruling that we're all talking about that took place. We are confident that should anything happen, 1st of April, grants will be paid. I assume emergency measures are being talked about as we speak, and grants should be paid, even if it means cash going out in security vans on their day to ensure that people are paid. I'm sure that government feels that should they not pay out on the 1st of April, the backlash is going to be massive. But also, in terms of the way things are being handled, the continuous secrecy around this negotiation with CPS, the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability by any official coming forward, the lack of answers being given to the Constitutional Court about what led to where we are right now, doesn't give you much confidence going forward that this is going to be handled well. If they had come forward today and their papers read better with far more tangible proof there of what was going to happen and how this was going to roll out, then maybe civil society and beneficiaries would feel a little bit more at peace. But yet again, we have papers that are vague. We have accountability and governance being placed on other entities, which, as the previous speaker said, are already overloaded with their own deliverables. So, it's very concerning to us as civil society and the Black Sash as to what form this internal insourcing will take over the next few years, months, etc. We're still waiting to see some tangible plan as to what Sassa and the Department of Social Development will do around this.
We're going to have to leave it there, but very briefly, who stands to benefit from this chaos?
Well, the private enterprise that is going to be making the profits, but really it's high time. I don't think this matter should have been going to court. The president should have held those that are responsible for this catastrophe accountable, and not only that, they must bear the consequences of this. Really is untenable. And the rule of law here is unfortunately the one that is going to suffer, because we are going to go yet into another period whereby the rule of law will not be observed in order to avert this catastrophe. That cannot be good for our democracy. That cannot be good for our country at all. Somebody needs to have been held accountable and to bear the consequences of this.
Mr.